Benjamin pressed his forehead against the steering wheel and let himself sit there in the driveway. The house before him looked worse than the photos. Paint peeling like sunburned skin, shutters hanging at odd angles, a porch that sagged in the middle like a tired smile. This was the fourth house in 3 years, each one a little more broken than the last. "Dad?" Aaron's voice came from the passenger seat, small and careful. "Are we going in?" Benjamin lifted his head and found his son watching him with those eyes, Chelsea's eyes, brown and warm and impossibly patient for a 9-year-old who'd already learned how to tiptoe around his father's grief. "Yeah, buddy, let's check out our new project." The word project felt hollow in his mouth. That's what he called them now, projects, never homes. Homes were what they'd lost 2 years ago when Chelsea's car had been hit by a drunk driver on a Tuesday afternoon. Homes were where love lived. These houses were just something to do with his hands while his heart figured out how to beat normally again. The realtor had left the key under the mat, a small-town courtesy that Benjamin would never have trusted in the city. Brookside Lane was lined with maple trees just starting to turn, their leaves bleeding orange and gold into the September air. It was the kind of street where neighbors knew each other's names, the kind of street Chelsea would have loved. Benjamin pushed that thought down like he pushed down everything else and unlocked the door. The smell hit them first. Dust and old wood and something else, something like lavender and lemon, faint but persistent, as if someone had tried very hard to make this house smell like a home once upon a time. "Whoa," Aaron whispered, his backpack sliding off his shoulder as he stepped inside. The interior was a disaster. Water damage stained the ceiling in spreading brown clouds. The hardwood floors were scratched and dull. Someone had started painting the living room a cheerful yellow, but had stopped halfway through, leaving a stark line between hope and abandonment. But there was something about the bones of the place. High ceilings, original crown molding, a stone fireplace that dominated one wall like an ancient altar. Benjamin could see it, not as it was, but as it could be. He'd gotten good at that, seeing potential in broken things. "Can I pick my room?" Aaron asked, already halfway up the stairs. "Sure, just watch your step. Those boards might not be—" A loud crack interrupted him, followed by Aaron's startled yelp. Benjamin took the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering. "Aaron! I'm okay. I'm okay." Aaron was sitting on the landing, his foot having gone through a weak board, but he wasn't crying. He was laughing, that surprised kind of laugh that comes after a scare. "Dad, look." He was pointing at the hole his foot had made. In the space beneath the broken board, something was visible in the darkness. Benjamin knelt beside him and carefully pulled away more of the damaged wood. The gap revealed a hidden compartment under the stairs, not an accident of construction, but something deliberate, a small space, maybe 3 feet by 2 feet, tucked away where you'd never find it unless you were looking, or unless you fell through the floor. Inside was a box. It was wooden, cedar from the smell of it, with a tarnished brass latch. Benjamin lifted it out carefully. It was heavier than he expected, and when he shook it gently, things shifted inside with a soft shuffling sound. "What is it?" Aaron pressed close, his earlier fright forgotten. "Let's find out." They sat together on the landing, and Benjamin opened the box. Inside were drawings, dozens of them. Children's drawings, the kind made with crayons and markers, and the absolute certainty that only kids have when they're creating. The paper was yellowed at the edges, some pieces more than others, as if they'd been collected over many years. Benjamin lifted the first one out. It showed a house. This house, he realized, recognizing the distinctive peaked roof and the large oak tree in the front yard. A stick-figure family stood in front of it. Mum, Dad, 2 kids and a dog. Everyone was smiling. The son in the corner had a happy face. "They lived here," Aaron said softly. "Whoever drew this." Benjamin set it aside and picked up another. This one showed a birthday party, balloons and a cake with candles, a banner that said, "Happy Birthday, Sophie." in careful, crooked letters. Another showed a garden with flowers labelled in a child's handwriting. Roses, daisies, tulips. Another, a family at the beach, the ocean rendered as a strip of blue crayon. Seagulls like check marks in the sky. Benjamin felt something shift in his chest. These weren't just drawings, they were memories, someone's childhood, preserved in crayon and marker and love, hidden away under the stairs like treasure. "Why would someone hide these?" Aaron asked. "I don't know, buddy." But as Benjamin continued through the stack, he began to see a story. The drawings had dates on them, written in adult handwriting in the corner. The earliest was from 1992, the latest from 2003. And slowly, the pictures changed. The family drawings became less frequent. The ones that appeared showed fewer people. 4 became 3, then 2. The stick figures stopped smiling. One drawing showed a house in the rain, all greys and blues, the windows like sad eyes. Then there was one that made Benjamin stop breathing. It showed a car accident, crude, the way a child would draw it, but unmistakable. 2 cars crumpled together, black crayon marks like smoke or maybe just chaos. And beside it, in careful letters, the day everything changed. Aaron's hand found his. "Dad?" Benjamin couldn't speak for a moment. He understood now, in a way that made his throat tight. Whoever had hidden these drawings had lived through their own tragedy, had tried to preserve the before, maybe, while living in the after. He was about to set the box aside when Aaron reached past him and pulled out one more drawing. It had been at the very bottom, face down, separated from the others by a piece of cardboard. "Dad?" Aaron's voice was strange. "Dad, look at this one." Benjamin took it from his son's trembling hands. The drawing showed a house on a street corner. Maple trees lined the sidewalk, and in the driveway stood 3 stick figures, a man, a woman, and a small child between them. But it was the details that made Benjamin's heart stop. The woman had brown crayon hair and a dress with flowers. The child was holding a baseball bat, and in the corner, in handwriting he recognized as clearly as his own heartbeat, was written, "The Johnson family, our neighbors. I used to play with Aaron." Chelsea's handwriting. The world tilted. Benjamin read it again, certain he was mistaken, but no, that was Chelsea's careful print, the way she dotted her I's, the slight slant to her letters. "That's Mom's writing," Aaron whispered. "Dad, that's Mom." Benjamin's hands were shaking. He turned the drawing over. On the back, in the same handwriting, Sophie Williams, age 8, 2001. Chelsea had known the child who'd drawn these pictures, had lived on this street, had been someone's neighbor before Benjamin had ever met her. He stood up so fast he almost dropped the box. "Stay here." "Dad!" But Benjamin was already moving, taking the stairs down 2 at a time, pulling out his phone. His mind was racing. Chelsea had grown up in this town. He knew that. They'd met in college, gotten married, moved to the city for his job, but she'd always talked about coming back here someday, about raising their family in the place she'd loved as a child. She'd never mentioned this street, this house. He called the realtor. "Margaret, it's Benjamin Hayes, the house on Brookside Lane. Who owned it before? Who's selling it?" "Oh, let me check." A pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "It's actually an estate sale. The previous owner passed away 6 months ago. A woman named Rebecca Williams. Lived there for 40 years, apparently. Never married, no children of her own. The property went to a cousin who's selling it off." Rebecca Williams, Sophie's mother. Benjamin felt like he was in a dream. "Do you know anything about the family? Did they have a daughter?" "I don't know the details, but I can ask around if—" No, that's okay. Thank you." He hung up and just stood there in the empty living room with its half-painted walls and water-stained ceiling, Chelsea had played in this house, had been friends with a girl named Sophie who'd lived here and drawn pictures of her world. And somehow, 30 years later, Benjamin had bought this house without knowing, without Chelsea here to tell him, without any logical reason for the universe to bring him to this specific place except what? He didn't believe in signs, didn't believe in fate or divine intervention, or any of the comforting stories people told themselves about the way the world worked. Chelsea was gone. That was random and meaningless and unfair, and no amount of cosmic coincidence would change that. But he was standing in a house his dead wife had played in as a child, holding drawings that proved it. And if that wasn't the universe trying to tell him something, then what was it? Aaron appeared at the bottom of the stairs, still holding the box. "Dad, are you okay?" "I don't know," Benjamin said honestly. They spent the rest of that afternoon going through the drawings with new eyes. Now that they knew to look, they could see Chelsea everywhere. Not in the pictures themselves, those had all been drawn by Sophie, but in the world they depicted. There were drawings of children playing in the street. One of them always had brown hair and flower dresses. There were pictures labelled Emily's birthday party and playing at Emily's house. Emily had been Chelsea's middle name, the name she'd gone by as a child before deciding in high school that she preferred Chelsea. There were gaps in the collection, years missing, and Benjamin understood those too. After the accident that Sophie had drawn, the one that changed everything, the pictures had become more sporadic, more melancholy. The last drawing in the box was dated December 2003. It showed two girls sitting under a tree, drawn in careful detail that suggested an older child, maybe a teenager. One girl was clearly Sophie. The other, Benjamin was certain, was Chelsea. On the back, Sophie had written, "Em is moving away. Her family is leaving Brookside. I'll never forget her." Benjamin sat on the floor of the empty house and cried. He hadn't cried at Chelsea's funeral, hadn't cried when he'd packed up her clothes or when Aaron had asked why Mommy couldn't just come back. He'd been holding it together with both hands, convinced that if he let himself break, he'd never be able to fix himself again. But here, in this broken house that Chelsea had loved as a child, surrounded by another family's grief that had somehow intersected with his own, Benjamin finally let himself fall apart. Aaron crawled into his lap, too big for it really, but doing it anyway. "It's okay, Dad. It's okay." And Benjamin held his son and realized that Aaron had been carrying his own grief all this time, had been watching his father drown and trying to throw him life preservers made of patience and understanding and love. This 9-year-old child had been more emotionally present than Benjamin had been in 2 years. "I'm sorry," Benjamin whispered into his son's hair. "I'm so sorry, buddy." "It's okay to be sad," Aaron said, and Benjamin recognized his own words, the things he'd said to Aaron in those first awful weeks. "Mom would want us to be sad sometimes, but she'd also want us to be happy too." "When did you get so wise?" "Mom told me once that sadness and happiness can live in the same house. You just have to make room for both." Benjamin pulled back to look at his son. "She said that?" Aaron nodded. "Before she died, when her grandma passed away. She said it's okay to laugh even when you're missing someone. That's not forgetting them. It's remembering them the right way." Chelsea had said something like that to him too, Benjamin realized. Back when they'd first met, when he'd told her about losing his own father, she told him that grief wasn't something you got over. It was something you learned to carry differently. He'd forgotten that, or maybe he'd just been refusing to learn. Over the following weeks, Benjamin and Aaron worked on the house with a new purpose. They weren't just fixing another project. They were honoring a connection that had existed before Benjamin was even part of the story. Benjamin patched the water damage and refinished the floors. Aaron helped paint the living room. They finished the yellow the previous owner had started, and it brought light into the space like morning. They fixed the saggy porch and straightened the shutters. They planted flowers in the garden, following Sophie's drawing like a map. Roses, daisies, tulips, and Benjamin asked questions. He talked to the neighbours, the ones who'd lived on Brookside Lane for decades. He learned about the Williams family, about Sophie's father, who died in a car accident in 1995 when Sophie was only 6. About Rebecca, who'd raised her daughter alone and had loved this house fiercely, but had never quite been able to afford all the repairs it needed. About Sophie herself, who'd moved away after high school and only came back occasionally, who'd become a teacher, who'd never married but who'd, according to one neighbour, loved those kids she taught like they were her own. She took care of her mother at the end, old Mr. Patterson from 3 doors down told Benjamin. Rebecca had Alzheimer's. Sophie moved back for the last 2 years, but it was hard. When Rebecca died, Sophie said she couldn't bear to keep the house. Too many memories, I guess, both happy and sad. Benjamin understood that too well. One evening in late October, as Benjamin and Aaron were putting the finishing touches on the restored fireplace, there was a knock at the door. Benjamin opened it to find a woman in her early 40s, with dark hair and tired eyes that still managed to be kind. She was holding a casserole dish and looking at the house with an expression Benjamin couldn't quite read. "Hi," she said. "I'm Sophie Williams. I hope you don't mind. Mrs. Patterson told me someone had bought my mother's house and I wanted to see it one more time before I left town for good." Benjamin's heart was hammering. "Come in, please." Sophie stepped inside and stopped. Her hand went to her mouth. Oh, it's beautiful. You've made it beautiful again." "We tried to honor it," Benjamin said, "to honor your mother's home." Sophie walked slowly through the rooms, touching the freshly painted walls, running her fingers along the restored molding. When she reached the fireplace, she stopped and smiled. She loved this fireplace. Used to read to me here every night when I was little. "Miss Williams," Benjamin said, "there's something I need to show you." He brought out the box of drawings. Sophie's eyes widened. "I forgot about these," she whispered, kneeling beside the box. "Mom must have hidden them. After I left for college, she had a hard time letting go of things, kept everything that reminded her of when Dad was alive, when we were all happy." She lifted out a few pictures, her eyes getting wet. "God, I remember drawing these. This was our dog, Biscuit. This was Dad's garden. This was—" She stopped. She was holding the drawing of the Johnson family, the one with Chelsea's handwriting. "Emily," she breathed. "Oh my God, Emily Johnson. We were best friends until her family moved away. I thought—" She looked up at Benjamin. "How do you have this? Why would this be here?" Benjamin took a breath. "Emily Johnson was my wife. Her name was Chelsea. That's what she went by later. We have a son, Aaron." He gestured to where Aaron was watching from the stairs. "She died 2 years ago, in a car accident." Sophie's face crumpled. "Oh no, oh Emily. I tried to find her years ago, but Johnson is such a common name, and I didn't know she'd changed her name to Chelsea. And She pressed her hand to her chest. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "We didn't know about this house," Benjamin continued. "Didn't know Chelsea had lived on this street or that she'd known you. I bought this place by chance. Complete coincidence. And then we found your drawings and I saw her handwriting and you realized," Sophie finished softly. She looked around the restored room. "You realized you'd come to a place that knew her grief, and yours. Something like that." Sophie was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "My dad died when I was 6. Car accident. Drunk driver, just like—" She glanced at Aaron and amended, "Just like what happened to your wife, Emily, Chelsea. She was the only kid who understood. Everyone else wanted me to be okay, to move on, to be normal. But Emily just sat with me, Let me be sad. Drew pictures with me? She held up one of the drawings, the two girls under a tree. Before she moved away, she told me something I've never forgotten. She said that people we love don't really leave us. They become part of how we see the world, part of what we build and create and care about. She said her grandmother had told her that, and it was the truest thing she knew. Benjamin felt something crack open in his chest, something that had been locked tight for 2 years. I think, Sophie said slowly, that maybe she brought you here, not like magic or ghosts or anything like that, but maybe you chose this house because some part of you recognized it, recognized the grief in these walls and knew you could heal it, and in healing it, heal yourself. That's not possible, Benjamin said, but his voice was uncertain. Isn't it? Sophie smiled. You've taken a house that held my family's sadness and made it beautiful again. You've honored my mother's memory by finishing what she couldn't. You've taught your son that broken things can be fixed, that endings can become beginnings. That sounds exactly like something Emily would do, like something she'd want you to do. Aaron came down the stairs then and held out one of the drawings to Sophie, the one of the two girls playing. Were you and my mom really best friends? We were, Sophie said, her voice thick. She was the best friend I ever had. What was she like when she was a kid? Sophie looked at Benjamin, asking permission. He nodded. She was brave, Sophie said, sitting on the floor with Aaron like they were old friends. She was the one who always stood up for other kids. And she loved to build things. She was always drawing plans for tree houses we were going to make, or forts, or elaborate cities with Legos. Dad builds things, Aaron said. He fixes houses. Does he? Sophie looked at Benjamin. That makes sense. Emily always said she was going to live in a house she fixed up herself someday. She said broken things just needed someone to see them the right way. Benjamin had to sit down. Chelsea had never told him that. But he'd been doing exactly what she'd dreamed of, and he'd never known. He'd thought he was running away from the home they'd lost. But maybe he'd been running towards something she'd always wanted. The three of them spent the evening together. Sophie told stories about Chelsea as a child, Emily, full of life and laughter and stubborn courage. Aaron listened with wide eyes, learning about a mother he'd been forgetting little by little, gaining her back through Sophie's memories. And Benjamin learned that grief wasn't something you carried alone, that it could connect you to people across time and distance, that his wife's childhood friend had survived the same kind of loss he was surviving now, and she'd made it through. She'd built a life that mattered. Before Sophie left, she gave Benjamin a gift. It was a photo album she'd brought from her mother's belongings, one she'd found while clearing out the house months ago but hadn't been able to look at. Inside were pictures of 2 little girls on Brookside Lane, playing in sprinklers, riding bikes, making snow angels. Chelsea's young face, smiling and whole and alive in a way Benjamin had forgotten she'd once been. I want you to have these, Sophie said. I have my memories. Aaron should have pictures. Benjamin tried to refuse. They were her memories too, but Sophie was firm. Emily would want him to have them, and besides, I think I've been holding on to the past too hard, just like my mom did. Maybe it's time I let some of it go, not forget, just carry it differently. She paused at the door and turned back. You know what Emily told me the last day before she moved away? She said, something good will happen in this house again someday. You watch. I thought she was just trying to make me feel better. But she was right. You're the something good, Benjamin. You and Aaron, you're what she was talking about. After she left, Benjamin stood in the living room of the house on Brookside Lane and felt something he hadn't felt in 2 years. He felt at home. Not because the repairs were finished or because the house was beautiful again, though it was, with its refinished floors and painted walls and flowers blooming in the garden, but because he finally understood what Chelsea had been trying to tell him all along, that broken things could be fixed, that sadness and happiness could live in the same house, that the people we love become part of how we build our lives, even after they're gone. That night, Benjamin and Aaron hung the drawings on Aaron's bedroom wall. Not all of them, but a few. The happy ones, the ones that showed a family who'd loved this house and each other, the ones that included a little girl named Emily, who'd grown up to be Chelsea, who'd taught Benjamin about love and loss and the space between. "Dad?" Aaron asked as Benjamin was tucking him in. "Are we going to stay here? Or is this just another project?" Benjamin looked around the room, at the drawings on the wall, at the window that looked out over Brookside Lane, where maple trees were shedding their leaves like gold coins, at his son's face, hopeful and patient and so much like Chelsea. It made his heart ache in a good way now. "We're staying," he said. "This is home." "Really? Really? Your mum loved this street when she was your age. I think she'd want us to love it too." Aaron smiled, and it was the first real smile Benjamin had seen from him in months. "I think she'd be happy we found it." "I think so too, buddy." Benjamin turned off the light, but left the door cracked, the way Aaron liked it. As he walked down the hall, he paused and looked back. In the slice of light from the hallway, he could see one of Sophie's drawings on the wall. Two girls under a tree, friends who'd helped each other through the worst thing that could happen to a child. One of them had grown up to be Benjamin's wife. The other had grown up to be the stranger who'd helped him remember that grief wasn't a house you lived in alone. It was something you built through, fixing what was broken, making room for new life among the old memories. Benjamin had bought 3 houses before this one, and he'd left them all behind without looking back. But this house on Brookside Lane, this house with its hidden drawings and its connection to Chelsea's childhood and its insistence on being not just repaired but loved, this house he would keep. Because Chelsea had been right, even as a child. Something good would happen here again. It already had. Benjamin walked down to the living room and sat in front of the fireplace where Sophie's mother had once read to her daughter, where a little girl named Emily had probably sat and listened too, storing up courage for the life she'd lead and the love she'd give and the lesson she'd teach her husband decades later about carrying grief differently. He pulled out his phone and looked at the last photo of Chelsea. She was laughing, her head thrown back, completely alive. He'd been avoiding this photo, unable to look at it without feeling like he was drowning. But tonight, in this house that had known her before he did, Benjamin could look and remember and smile. "Thank you," he whispered to the empty room, to the memory of his wife, to the universe that had brought him here. "Thank you for showing me the way home." Outside, the maple trees whispered in the autumn wind. Inside, the house on Brookside Lane settled around Benjamin like a gentle embrace. And somewhere in the space between what was lost and what was found, Chelsea smiled. "If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? What lesson did this story teach you about healing, or homes, or the unexpected ways love finds us even in our darkest moments? Sometimes the most broken places hold the most beautiful beginnings. Sometimes the houses we fix end up fixing us instead. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if Benjamin and Aaron's journey reminded you that it's okay to rebuild, to hope again, to find home in unexpected places, please consider sharing this story. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about the gentle strength it takes to heal, to love again, and to believe that something good can happen, even in the spaces grief leaves behind. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, the people we love never really leave us. They become part of everything we build, every home we create, every new beginning we dare to choose. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.